Hello, everybody. Welcome to Star Trek Lost Stars. My name is Tony Morrow, and thank you for joining us live. If you're catching us live, if you're catching us on the replay, then thanks for making the time and joining us here on Star Trek Lost Stars. But if it is your first time and you're wondering, Tony, what in the world is Star Trek Lost Stars? And let me tell you, Star Trek Lost Stars is a 4X turn-based strategy game that we and a couple of friends of mine play together using the rule set as set up by the Amarillo Design Bureau for Federation and Empire. We play it online using a platform called Vassal and stream it live for you so that you can watch and join in on the storytelling, the narrative, the evolving conflicts, and the fun as we virtually, or rather we beat each other up in virtual space using Star Trek themes. So yeah, that's us. Thank you for joining us here today. And today's exciting topic or cliffhanger, and I feel like I should be able to have a sound clip of that song where it goes, "Is this the end?" And if you're of a certain vintage, you know what song I'm talking about. But is this the end? Is this the end? What's going on? Qu'est-ce qui arrive? And what on earth is a D-bomb? Well, let me tell you. So in recent events, and you'll notice that last week we didn't have a live stream. I do apologize. That was mostly because I was sick and my voice was so terrible that we wouldn't have been able to get through even 5 minutes of this without you switching to something else. So what's happened? What is a D-bomb and what happens next? So fundamentally, a D-bomb is what I refer to as a drama bomb. It is the worst and most critical sort of Achilles heel of any gaming group. If you've ever been part of a group of individuals who enjoy having fun and get along doing stuff, somewhere along the way something will happen and drama will rear its ugly head. Unfortunately, something has occurred, something totally beyond our control, and as a result, our campaign has ended rather early. And you might think to yourself, man, things were just heating up. I was so excited to watch the Klingons jump the Paravians, or the Hydrants get thumped by the Paravian Romulan Tholian alliance, or whatever was forming there. Whatever happened with the Juggernauts and all that other business? Yes, it's true. All that stuff is unfortunately now dying a cold death in that particular universe. And so unfortunately we have to sort of spread the ashes, make the bed, and move on, because we have something new and exciting coming for all of you to be able to watch, engage in, and be entertained by as we move forward. So what is that new thing? So this entire situation has become an incredible opportunity, an opportunity to be able to start a new campaign, which we'd already talked about. We were going to start a new campaign in January as it was, or early in the new year. Now that is just happening a little earlier. So if you were catching or following along on this channel, looking forward to the start of that new campaign, well, don't worry, it's coming sooner than you think. So we are starting a new campaign, Star Trek Lost Stars New Worlds. And I think that's probably going to end up being truncated to just New Worlds, but we'll see how that sort of title evolves. But New Worlds is the name of our new campaign. And fundamentally, we have a total of 7 players and 1 new GM. So how this works is that in previous games, due to a combination of the limited number of players that we had, our GM participated in the game, and that provided some interesting interplay as far as the restrictions he put on himself, so that it wasn't biased. And then once sort of everyone bumped into each other, kind of the interesting things that would happen. In this new iteration, the GM is going to be completely removed, and he's not going to be a playing party or a faction within the game. And and then we're going to have a total of 7 other players in the campaign. The races, or the different factions that we'll be playing at this moment, as of today, are the ISC. Now, if you're a fan of the Starfleet universe, as we've described it, then you are familiar with the ISC. But if you have no idea what that is, the ISC is basically, in sort of the traditional history of the Starfleet universe, we'll call them the Uber United Nations of galactic peace. They enforce galactic peace through force, and they decided to sort of part the squabbling children apart, being the Feds, the Klingons, the Romulans, and all the rest, at some point when they encountered all of us and decided to sort of enforce peace and stop the squabbling. The ISC is typically a plasma race. They are what I would call heavy hitters. They have very potent ships. They have very sort of competent or they're very powerful ships and they pack a lot of punch. The problem is they tend to be a little pricey as far as the economics of being able to pay for these ships and so on and so forth. So the ISC, and they're a plasma-based race, sort of in the vein of the Gorn and the Romulans. So they're going to be in the game. We have the Federation, the classic Feds, sort of Terran-born. We have the Klingons. I will be reprising my role as the Klingons due to our sort of early stoppage. I'll be reprising that role as the Klingons, but a totally new iteration, totally new interpretation of what the Klingons are. I'll be veering hard, sort of a hard left away from the traditional Klingon history that you know from any Star Trek reference that you've ever had in the past. And again, we're going to be leaning hard into a sort of a totally new narrative, which I will sort of create and flesh out for you in the days to come. We also have the Lyrans, which, if you remember from our previous campaign, the Lyrans are kind of like space mountain lions or lynx, and they they have an interesting combination of features to their ships, but basically they're sort of like a disruptor species, very akin to sort of the Klingons in some of that way. So we have the Lyrans, the Romulans, the Hydrans, which are our tentacular folks that we were so excited about in the previous campaign, and of course the Gorn. I mean, who doesn't love the Gorn? We love our full-fledged MMA fight between Kirk and the captain of the Gorn ship from back in our classic TOS days. But Gorns fundamentally are the heavy hitters when it comes to ships. They are expensive, they are powerful, they are potent, and when it comes to things like ground factors or like ground assaults that they will do, they end up being quite potent. They also have a unique ability when it comes to repair, but we'll get to that as the campaign goes on. So that's it. That's our roster for right now with the ISC, the Feds, the Klingons, the Lyrans, Romulans, Hydran, and Gorn. Those are the players in, or the factions in play, and how that all evolves, we shall see. Just checking my email here moments before we went live, I was very excited and sort of, doing the classic Mr. Burns, realizing that turn 1 is already in my inbox. So with that turn 1 in hand, I'll have to start planning out what we shall be doing Klingon-wise in the future and how we will map our conquest of the galaxy. Don't worry, we'll bring that to you live as it comes week after week. One thing to note here, if you're catching this on the replay, you will see that there's a number of folks joining us in the live chat. We have Jim, we have Dan, we have Paul, and the interesting thing about a lot of the players that are watching this live stream right now, the folks watching this live stream right now, is that they are players. So how do you want me to be able to manage the reveal of information? Do you want me to just drop the curtain, as it would be in my birthday suit and just everyone to watch exactly what it is I'm doing from the Klingon faction perspective? That would be an interesting challenge and be sort of interesting to see how all the other players would sort of beeline for me on the map, because as soon as I reveal my map, they'll know where I am and they can sort of target me if that's the choice, or avoid me as the case may be. So it'll be interesting to see how that would work if that was the case. Or would you like to see something more like a delayed turn unveiling? So for example, let's say we are 2 weeks into the game, and after 2 weeks I start to reveal turn 1, or something along those lines. Now, it's true, like in the early days of the campaign, things will be, we're not going to be bumping into each other for a little while. If you remember from the very beginning of this live stream, when it first got started, we started off in this like little island of nothingness all by ourselves and slowly expanded out. And as we expanded out, found other players, other factions, and started interacting with them. Now, at that time, the majority of the other players in the game didn't watch this live stream, so no harm, no foul. They had no interest, no way, no real ability to use that information for any tangible benefit. However, the very eager, engaged, and attentive folks that are currently in the chat right now, as Paul says, get them, that's going to make things sort of interesting. So, what do you want me to do? I mean, I know what these guys want me to do. They want me to just reveal it all and let's get her done. And that would be a fun. Jim says exactly. That would be fun because it's a sort of an interesting challenge for me. I would not know where the threat's coming from, sort of in advance, but I would see, obviously, when I encounter them, I would start to deal with them at that point. So that would be interesting to see how that would play out. Would there be some other kind of situation, some other way of mapping that out that you would prefer? If so, please let me know. But one of the things I would like to do for the next couple of broadcasts as we're coming to you is to start mapping out exactly what it is, or maybe some of the changes that we have in regards to the rules. As you know, we base this game on the Federation and Empire rule set as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. Great folks over there making it possible for us to be able to play this game, period. And of course, us being able to do it sort of in this virtual space. One of the things that we do, though, is that we, like any game, you have sort of house rules or amendments or ways to be able to make it more playable, in this case, in the environment that we're in, being that we're virtual, turn-based, and also the fact that we are doing this in a 4X capacity, which Federation Empire isn't normally. There is obviously an open campaign version if you're an F&E fan, but generally speaking, the way we played this game is not sort of the original intent of the rule set. So we've included a couple little things based on our experience playing the game to be able to make it more fair, or to impose certain restrictions to prevent sort of gaming of the system, or ways to be able to improve the player experience overall for all the players playing. And so that's what we're doing. And would it be useful for you to be able to map out some of those changes and how sort of the mechanics work. Perhaps not as exciting as live streams that talk about war and conflict and the sort of the role-playing drama that is occurring as the narrative of our story sort of plays out, but a little bit more on the mechanical side, or the mechanics side, to be able to understand how and what happens in the nuts and bolts of how we play this. Bill's screaming about being the space dragons. Yeah, well, I mean, if the Gorns have a bunch of space dragons, I suppose that could kind of make sense in a weird kind of way. Whatever the fanciful flavor of the day will be, that's up to you to play. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this maps out. I'm also going to be, just as you saw earlier on at the very beginning of this series, I talked about penal ships and some of the special units that Klingons have within the rule set, and I can sort of revamp and re-talk about or re-engage some of those subjects around some of those special units, and also just sort of the strategy and the gameplay and what we found and what works. Certainly, I can do episodes like that if you would like, as opposed to just pure updates as to sort of how the story is evolving. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the story is going to evolve over the next little bit, and what early gameplay looks like, so we can set your expectations and you can understand what's coming your way. 1. In most recent broadcasts, you have seen us reveal maybe 1 or 2 turns at a time, in the sense that the pace of change, or the pace of the turns as they're unveiled, is rather quick. In this early stage, if you go back to the original, or sort of the early broadcast, you will see that we do turns in bunches, so to speak. So let me give you an example. When we don't have anyone that we're playing against, no players that we're touching or have encountered as of yet, we can theoretically move the turns forward independent of each player. Meaning, I got 5 players, and they can all sort of like do a bunch of turns from 1 to 20, let's say. I know that in the next 20 turns, neither one of those 5 players is going to bump into each other unless something magic happens. So they can all sort of burst ahead to a certain degree. So maybe we go in 10-turn bursts or 20-turn bursts, or whatever the burst choice is. You want to keep all those players sort of close together, relatively speaking. Like, you don't want a person at turn 100 and another one at turn 10. That's a bit of a crazy delta. But you could definitely have somebody at turn 15, someone at 20, maybe at 25. and you're just progressing them as you go. There are some things that may occur. So, for example, you saw in the last game we had wormholes and things like that. That can radically change how we interact with the players. But generally speaking, especially in these early days or these early turns, not a lot happens from turn to turn. So the only way you sort of make progress or build up the momentum, that speed of expansion, is to kind of do 10 or 20 at a time. So how do you do that? Because if you were playing the game in person, which is sort of normally how the game is played, then you can move pieces quickly. But in this format, how do you do that? So in this way, what we do is we provide an intent, a format where we provide a general description of what it is we want to do. And as I've described to you before, we have the map and we have the spreadsheet. So we manage the economics of it all in the sense of, like, you're spending money to buy ships, to buy bases, to buy slipways, to buy things. And we manage that all on a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet goes by turn. You can fill it out, because in the early days, you're not going to all of a sudden get an extra $10 to spend when your base economy starts off at, let's say, 10. So you know that if you're going to find new resources, new money to spend, it'll be gradual over time, most likely. So you can do that. You can plan 10 turns or even 20 turns at a time. You just map that out. And you can give general instructions on what to do with those units. By example, at the very beginning of the game, one of the things that many players have done is to build exploration ships and go forth into the Great Void and expand their borders. Explore space, try and find new resources, and maybe new enemies to fight. So in order to do that, you need to kind of provide the GM some direction on where are they going to go. Are they going to go up? They're going to go down? They're going to go left? They're going to go right? Where are they going to go? And you got to map that out. So, for example, in previous games, I have described it as I will move my ships out at cardinal points. Now, cardinal points are north, south, east, west. But in this game, it's a hex. So it's a six-sided shape, which means that there is no strict east and west. So what, for example, you can describe is I'm going to move my my vessels or my ships out at cardinal points of, let's say, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, by example, and north and south, depending on how many of these ships you have. And then you just move them out, let's say 1 hex, and then depending on what they explore or expand or how successful they are in their exploration, you can go out to the edge of your supply, which normally at the very beginning of the game is starting at 2, and then you can work to 3 and 4 and so on. So you can work that, and then you can rotate them, or maybe you want to create these like spokes of exploration out in any particular direction, or whatever the case is. But nonetheless, you have to write a brief and so something very short and very simple about what kind of direction you want to give the GM. I want to explore in the directions of, let's say, northeast, southwest, northwest, southeast, and I will move in those directions to the edge of my supply as best as able, and then I will continue to explore unexplored hexes that are within my supply range. That gives the GM a lot of latitude to be able to do what's best for you based on what he sees, because the GM is not necessarily going to go back to you every time if he's going to try and do 10 turns in a sitting. Things that you can put in there to sort of protect you from bad things happening. So stop turn or return my turn in the event of discovering a new planet. That's a big one. If you discover a new planet, typically when you discover a planet, it is a non-player faction or it's neutral, and you have to sort of conquer it or something. You have to incorporate it into your empire before you do that. You could say that if you were really successful, you explored and you discovered, like, let's say 3 more economic points or dollars that you're spending. If you've got that much more income, maybe you want to tweak your balance sheet a little bit, and you switch it. So you tell the GM, if I discover more than 2, 3, 4, whatever the number of EP is, return my turn so I can adjust the balance sheet. You can make comments about, should I encounter a monster, another player faction, anything then, or an unexpected event, excuse me, if you encounter an unexpected event, then you can get that back. Little things like this. But the key is, don't, and this is sort of a note for all of our players, don't write a novella, because if the more words you put on a page, the more opportunity you give the GM to make a mistake, in the sense that he'll read this novella you've written in the event of do this, and in the event of do this. So if you write so many words that the GM has to really work hard at trying to remember what it is you put down, then there's a really good chance he might miss something. So just make it short, make it sweet, make it simple, and then that gives the GM the best latitude to be able to do what's best for you. Because remember, in this version of the game, the GM is not a player. He has no vested interest in any one particular player being more successful than the others. He's there to be able to sort of facilitate fun and have fun himself as he introduces new and exciting elements to the game, and see how that works. So to my fellow players, for those of us who are new at the sort of this stage of the game, give out those intent orders, make them simple, make them easy to understand, and point form is always great. And you know, do turns in bunches as opposed to one at a time. I will tell a story. There was a previous player in a previous campaign who was sort of known for his preference to micromanage, and he would only do 2 turns at a time. And because he would only do 2 turns at a time, everyone else was at like turn 20, and he was still in like turn 6 and 8. And it was just so labor intensive for the GM to interact with him. And he was so slow, relatively speaking, in getting the turns back, that the whole thing sort of ground to a halt for a while until that particular player sort of loosened up and was able to do turns in bigger numbers. It was amusing at the time, frustrating, of course, but at the end of the day, you know, this is just a game we're all having fun playing. So as you are playing it, as the folks that are on the live stream now are playing it, it's all about just having fun. So just enjoy it, have a good time, and you know, no matter what happens, it's never going to be perfect. And just wait for the first random event to sort of throw you off your plan and see what happens then. It's going to be exciting for sure. So let me ask here. So we're about 23 minutes into this live stream already. I can see we've got Daniel, we've got Jim, we've got Bill and Paul currently in the chat. Bill hammering us with all sorts of comments about the Gorn. Bill saying 2-week delay. Also speaking only for myself, the Gorn player. Please use my map. Also, it is. Oh, so Bill wants to be able to use his map as well. That'll be interesting. Also, new people join us. We only bite if asked. Okay, so for the new people that join us, he only bites if asked, is what he says. Obviously, you can see that the Gorn are craving attention. So you know, whether it's a nibble, a nudge, or other kind of fun stuff that you like to do with your scaly friend, wherever you may find them, just reach out to Bill, and Bill will be able to help you out there in the chat. But that's a really good question. So it reminded me of something that we talked about in the previous game as we were moving towards the new campaign starting in January. And since, you know, let this be the final piece of our discussion for today. So we have a core group now of 7 players. And in the previous sort of talking about the campaign, we had discussed the idea of getting up to the baker's dozen of 13 and pushing as much as 15. So we, as a group, are still interested in potentially more players joining us. So if that is something that you would be interested in, then please, the link to our the Lost Stars, and I will change the name and the banner imagery a little bit as we go forward. But the Lost Stars Facebook page, the Facebook page which is the home base on Facebook for this live stream, is in the link is in the chat right now near the top. You can go find that. I will pin it to the top of the comments if you're catching this on the replay. So head over to that page, Lost Stars, Star Trek Lost Stars on Facebook, and you will be able to follow the page. And of course, reach out to me on Facebook Messenger through that page and let me know that you would like to be potentially involved in our campaign. We talked about the Baker's Dozen, the magic number 13 before, and of course we're only at 7 now. So there is a potential for up to maybe as many as 6 other players potentially joining us. The only consideration that we have in this version versus previous versions is because we have a change in the role of Game Master, we have and some new sort of systems and rules that we've got in play. We're just testing out those systems. So the comfort level of workload and all that goes into that, we're going to manage that as we go. So what that means is first come, first serve for those who want to join us. We may reach a number of, let's say, 10 and realize, ooh, 10's too much, or 10's the magic number, we're going to hold it at 10. Or maybe that number is 13, we'll see. But if you're interested, if you're watching this live stream, you're interested in joining us in playing this 4X turn-based Star Trek universe strategy game, then please reach out on the Lost Stars Facebook page. Connect with me on Facebook Messenger, and we can see about introducing you into the campaign. But like I say, first come, first serve, and we'll talk about that as in future live streams as we kind of walk down this road and figure things out when it comes to managing the number of players. But it's something we've talked about in the sense that it would be interesting to see sort of players pop in as we go along, especially in the early stages of the game. There's lots of opportunity and potentially space for those players to be introduced. So with that said, I know it's kind of an out of left field kind of introduction in the sense that the D-bomb has blown up, or rather brought our previous universe to a sudden stop, and the cold death of that universe is a tragedy that we shall mourn for about 2 seconds and then move on to the new and exciting expanding universe that is New Worlds. And New Worlds will be a great opportunity for a whole bunch of players, in this case, players that we haven't played necessarily together other than briefly in the previous campaign, in this way, being able to play this campaign, go forth, expand those borders, encounter new enemies, exploit those resources. I mean, whether you exterminate your neighbors or not, I think that's up for debate. I know Jim has a particular bent on that, specifically with a particularly ridged forehead opponent. But how the story plays out, what kind of interesting things come our way, and what sort of wrenches get thrown into the whole affair, we shall see as you follow us here on Star Trek Lost Stars. Well, soon to be New Worlds. So stand by for the change in title on that. Feel free to hit the subscribe button if you are so inclined. Would like to follow and check out the evolving campaign as we start from ground zero now going forward. And if you haven't already, then please give us a thumbs up. That like button really helps the YouTube algorithm think that we are something that other Star Trek fans would like to see. And of course, the whole mission here is to be able to build out a player base of individuals who like this game, who want to be able to have fun together and, enjoy the virtual arena that we play in for strategy games overall. So if that's something that's up your alley, then please feel free to, again, hit that thumbs up, consider subscribing, and follow us along for the evolving gameplay that will be coming your way. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to move on and start planning out my turn. As I said, turn 1 has just hit my inbox, so I'm looking forward to, planning the death of the Hydrogen Kingdom. I mean, the expansion and exploration of strange new worlds. Seek out new life and civilizations. And of course, in classic Klingon fashion, subjugate the enemies of the Empire. I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.